Yeah, it's already 11:30. We can start now.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, welcome back. So, we'll get started this session, which are mainly to discuss about determination of SIF based on analytical methods. So, analytical method obviously SIF solutions for different geometry and loading has been obtained. Umpteen number of solutions have been obtained analytically, and many are obtained by numerical methods like finite element methods. There are also solutions based on experimental methods, and there are varieties of variants of any analytical method. So we'll hear today, we'll talk about some of the analytical methods which are initially applied to crack problems for finding out the expressions for SI, which have been actually mostly collected together to give the handbooks of stress intensity factor. Analytical methods, varieties of types are there, so we'll talk some of them and then also try to look into some problem solutions using them. So we'll consider now these analytical calculations are based on the expressions for stress intensity factor, and it can be actually written in the simple form. It is mode 1. Then in that case, if your coordinates are such that R is reckoned to 0 at the crack tip, and in case your crack is oriented, crack extension direction is oriented along the x direction, that is theta equal to 0, and y is accordingly oriented, then in that case mode 1 stress intensity factor K1 is given by limit r tends to 0 root 2 pi r sigma y of theta equal to 0. So sigma y stress is given in terms of r theta, and it is actually given sigma y expression, and then if you take the value of sigma y corresponding to theta equal to 0, that is along the x-axis, then take this limit K1, limit r tends to 0, root 2 pi r multiplied by sigma y theta corresponding to 0, it will give you the value of mode 1 stress intensity. Exactly the same manner, if it is mode 2, then in that case, same expression, but then the shear stress is going to act parallel to x-axis, and then in that case, you have to take root 2 pi r tau xy theta equal to 0 direction, and similarly, K3 is also actually of similar type. In that case, the stress is going to be actually tau yz stress. So these are actually the expressions and which can be applied. Now, in case you are having problems where the crack is not oriented in the convenient direction, and in that case, you see it's a crack at an angle with the loading direction, then obviously for such problems, it will involve both mode 1 and mode 2, and one can actually take the stress function in terms of the Westergaard stress function. Westergaard stress function, it will have both mode 1 and mode 2, and that x direction and y direction, please look at that direction, and loading direction also. In that case, you see that you can obtain the stress intensity factor. Crack tip is located at x equal to a and not at r equal to 0 or x equal to 0. Then in that case, K1 and K2 are obtained considering the stress functions F1z and F2z, and these expressions can be taken, and then you make use of the relationship crack is located at x equal to z equal to a, and then in that case square root 2 pi z minus a, f I z I can take value mode 1 and mode 2. So these are the expressions. Now, if the stresses are given in terms of two stress functions, let's say it is given in terms of Williams stress function, that means that eigenvalue expansion for the stresses, then in that case you will have two stress functions, Fz and Chi z. Yesterday we were discussing about it. And in that case, you see, it is possible to have the relationship, the two stress intensity. There is a problem where both the modes will be there. In that case, K1 minus IK2 is equal to limit Z tends to 0, Z equal to 0 at the crack tip, and its value is limit 2 root 2 pi Z F dash Z. So you can obtain the two stress intensity factor after actually substituting the value of Fz in terms of Z. And in case the crack tip is located at some point, not at Z equal to 0, but at Z equal to Z1, then in that case, you see the SIF expression is again given by I minus IK2 equal to limit Z tending to Z1 2 root 2 pi Z minus Z1 F dash Z. So these expressions are useful. And many times I think that this is something just in the passing I would like to mention here, that in many cases you see these complex crack problems are solved by mapping the configuration into another coordinate. So let's say in this case, we try to actually map the xy coordinate to zeta coordinate. Zeta is coordinate where xi and eta directions will be involved. In that case, crack tip, let's say, is located at point zeta equal to zeta 1. Then you see the solutions for the SIF is given. If the crack tip is located at zeta equal to zeta 1, then in that case it will be given 2 square root 2 pi w zeta minus w zeta 1 into f dash zeta by w dash zeta, where f dash z is derivative of f with respect to zeta. So this is actually on mapping of the geometry into convenient coordinates. And if you have the case wherein problem is involving more than one loading and it is of this type, crack face loading. In fact, this sort of loading in the case of rivet holes, rivet etc. in a plate, it will be quite common, and your loading then in that case crack is let's say oriented in the x-axis and it is spreading from A to B, and the loading is there on the crack faces where P and Q are concentrated loading at a fixed distance from the center. Then in that case, the solution for the stresses sigma y and I tau xy, because sigma y is going to give rise to opening mode and Q is going to give rise to mode 2, then the stresses at any point is going to be given by P plus IQ divided by pi into x minus b square root a square minus b square divided by x square minus x square, where PQ are loading, these are specified in units Newton per meter length. So these are the solutions. And so let's actually take some example here. Say solution for this is the solution for this problem itself. So this problem 5.1. So this is the problem. Its solution, we want to obtain the SIF. So in this case, concentrated loading is there, PQ, and then the expression for the stress intensity factor. If you are interested in obtaining the SIF at the tip B, then in that case you see that your expression for stresses are there, and then we make use of the formula, the state formula at the crack tip B. The SIF is limit r tends to 0 root 2 pi r sigma y theta corresponding to 0. So if I take the solutions, then it is crack is actually located at, let's say we try to take the crack center as the origin, then in that case limit x tends to a square root 2 pi x minus a p by pi x minus b into a square minus b square. So just simply, we take this solution, what is there, and then we try to sigma a solution. It will be dependent only on p, and therefore I can write this expression for the sigma y theta equal to 0, y is 0, so it gives this expression. And then once you try to go on simplifying, so x minus a will cancel with this, and therefore finally this becomes actually limit x tends to 0, this expression, and finally the SIF, mode 1 SIF at B corrective is going to be p by root pi a into square root a plus b minus a minus b. And similarly, KIA will be just actually you substitute. So at the point A, if you want to find out, so you simply substitute b by minus b and you get the solution. And similarly, if you are interested in K2 at the tip B, then you make use of the stress tau xy, theta equal to 0, and then in that case, in the SIF at the tip, because of the Q loading is going to be that. And it is also clear, it is simple to establish that SIF due to Q loading at the point tip A, it is going to be this. So this is it. Now we'll take up some example where the solution are to be obtained using the stress function, Westergaard stress function. Westergaard stress functions are defined with crack center as the origin, and in this case, Fz, Westergaard stress function for a crack with pressure loading on the crack faces. So what we are saying, that we have the crack where there is uniform pressure inside. So it's like actually fluid pressure is acting on the crack faces. Then the Fz function for this case is given P within bracket Z by square root Z square minus S square minus 1. P is the pressure. So SIF we can obtain again using the formula that just we gave above. It is limit Z tends to A 2 pi Z minus A into Fz, limit Z tends to A using the limit. What you find is that it is this expression herein, that this, it will give you Z tends to A, so this is not going to come, only you will have this first term, herein first term is going to give you, actually Z minus A will get cancelled, so it will be Z by square root Z plus A, and after simplifying, you get the SIF as P root by A. So please, I think this is an interesting point, that if you have a crack with uniform pressure acting on its faces of intensity P, then in that case, stress intensity factor is equal to root pi, P root pi A, pressure root pi. And I think you can imagine that if you have an infinite plate and it is loaded by uniform tension at outer boundary, then the SIF was the pressure multiplied by root pi A, exactly the same thing. So whether it's a problem of infinite plate subjected to uniform pressure at the boundary, or a plate with actually pressure loading on the crack edges, then the stress intensity factor is going to be the same. So now another example which is solved there, in this case it's a loading at an angle in the two directions. So therefore in this case, it is again given in the form using stress function Fz and psi z. So this psi is also defined in the expression below. So if you do that, then solution for this problem also can be obtained. And in fact, we can obtain the expression for stresses. In this case, sigma y is actually obtainable. So also tau xy is obtainable. And then you make use of the formula that limit x tending to x minus a, that means crack tip is at A. So if you do that, again you get the solution for stress intensity factor easily. And this is the mapping case. I think that mapping case I don't want to discuss here. because it will involve some other expansions and simplifications. So I leave it to you for reading, and it is manageable. So please actually take it up after you have finished the course and you are at leisure. Now I think we'll talk about some other method. So that was stress function method. Boundary collocation method. I think this is something I would just like you to note that what is that boundary collocation method. I think this is a very versatile method and it has wide applications. But then, I just would like to give you some brief about it. See that stress functions that we have written in terms of single term, Westergaard stress function and other things, they are actually possible that you can have the eigenfunction expansion. You see that rather than having single term expansion, you can have the multiple solutions obtained through eigenfunction approach. Then in that case, your stress functions will be infinite series. It will have infinite number of terms. And when you do that, this expression is going to be applicable for finite body and also infinite body. That is the advantage, that when you try to take expansions of stress functions in terms of eigenfunction approach, then it becomes an expression involving infinite number of terms. And in that process, the applicability of the expansion is available for both small and large body, finite and infinite body, and therefore it becomes more general. So in such cases, how do you actually extract the SIF? So in that case, you see that you are going to have expansions involving z to the power minus half, z to the power 0, z to the power half, z to the power 1, and so on. So now the question is, stress is given in terms of exponential expansions, and it will have infinite number of coefficients also. If every value of that eigenvalue will give you one expansion, and then you can just go on superposing them to get the general expansions. And in fact, the terms which are actually z to the power positive exponent, they are going to be actually having very high value as z increases, that at infinite locations. But as actually you try to think of z tending to 0, then the contribution is actually going to be reducing. But then if you have negative exponent, it again tends to infinity. So these expansions, they will have infinite number of constants and they will have general applicability. So in such cases, how do you solve it? I think this is just to, I hope you will be appreciating. So if it is infinite series, then the expansion for stresses sigma x, sigma y, and tau xy in 2 dimensions, they will have infinite number of terms. So therefore, the SIF in general will be related to the coefficients which are actually associated with z to the power minus half. So now the question is, how do you actually get the stresses at any location within the body which are having infinite series? So there you see, in that case, it is necessary to evaluate the constants which are actually there to give the expression for stress functions. So there the stress functions will involve constants corresponding to z to the power minus half, z to the power 0, z to the power plus half, and so on. And obviously to evaluate the stresses at any point within the body, then you need to have these constants evaluated. So how you do that? In those cases, it is that specified boundary conditions will be in terms of stresses which are actually given in the form of normal stress on the boundary and shear stress on the boundary, 2 stresses. So you can actually write the expression for stresses in terms of a coordinate system, your preferred coordinate system, and then at every location on the boundary, you know x and y coordinate and you know the values. And those values are going to be actually given in terms of all the constants that have been involved in the expression for stress function. And therefore, knowing the values of the boundary stresses, you can actually get the number of equations. Suppose you have selected, let's say, constants about 20 for this, each stress function, therefore the two stress function will have 20 constants. And then in that case, you see that you select about 10 stations at the outer boundary, and you know the value of these stresses, normal stress and shear stress, which are going to be given in terms of the coordinates. So you get that expansion and then use the value of the normal and shear stress and then write the simultaneous equations to evaluate the arbitrary constants. So therefore, first you get the stresses in terms of those arbitrary constants, evaluate the constants, then come back to determination of the stress intensity factor, which will be given by the coefficients which are associated with the z to the power minus half component. So this is it. So this boundary collocation method actually it is very useful for finite body, and you can certainly actually solve the problem by taking this approach. In this case, first of all, you have to write the stress functions in terms of infinite series Williams stress functions, and then try to evaluate the constants, knowing the stresses at the outer boundary in terms of the expansion, and then go for evaluation of the stresses anywhere inside or unknown point, and also at the same time, having obtained the coefficient of z to the power minus half term, you are going to be in a position to evaluate the SF. So this is how it is. So this boundary collocation method is a general method for the solution of problems of geometry with complicated boundary and straight loading. The other method of which are considered analytical is Green's function. Green's function method, I think some of you must have come across this Green's function method. So it is actually, it can, if you know the solution for the stresses in the body in terms of a point load, if you know the SIF in the form of a point load, then if you have the distributed loading, then you can actually write the stress function or stress intensity factor for the distributed load, considering the infinite number of load points on the boundary. So this is Green function. That means you superpose. You know the expression for a stress intensity factor for a single point load, and if you have infinite number of loads on the boundary, then in that case you simply superpose the stress intensity factor for each of the point using the Green's function. So this is actually from solution for point load, you can get the solution for distributed load. So like this, that this is an example which is shown there. So suppose you know the stress intensity factor or point load on the crack faces, so which is shown there, which is I have cancelled that. But then what it is, this P is the load distributed on the crack faces. But if you know that the stress intensity factor for load P or Q acting on the crack faces, so if you know the solution for stress intensity factor at the tip A and B corresponding to P, then it is called Green's function. It is the solution for concentrated load. Then for finding out the solution for distributed load over the crack faces A to B, then the solution is very easy. You simply do the integration. So in this case, it is actually distributed load. Then your Ki is crack span is minus A to plus A, and if the solution for one load of intensity P at a point, then just integrate this integral where this is the Green's function, and then actually P the external loading, and do this integration from minus A to plus A. That will give you the answer for the loading distributed or pressure loading on the crack faces. So that's how it is. It is quite actually straightforward. And Green's function method is again a general method, and it is used in many branches of engineering to find out the solution for distributed case loading cases or situations starting from single point situation. And this stress function, that similarly functions are given here. So if it is, suppose rather than P loading, pressure loading there, suppose your loading is given in terms of a function that P is a function of X, where P is a function of X is a function distributed over the crack edges, then in that case stress intensity factor at the tip A is given by this, and at the tip B it is given by this. So that's how it is. I'm sorry, this is actually mode 1 loading and this is mode 2 loading. So therefore, if fx and gx are the loading functions on the crack faces, then in that case you get by integration. So this is what the method. Many a times, stress intensity factor can also be obtained by cunning method like method of superposition. Method of superposition is again actually a strategy which can be utilized to find out solutions for unknown situations, knowing some solutions which is readily available. So like this, that I am just explaining here. Now how do we get? You see that suppose you are interested in finding out solution for a case wherein that you have, let's say, the solutions for loading at the outer boundary on this plate, then it is possible to find out the solution for the case this by method of superposition. What is that? If you look at this, what is this superposition? So suppose if you just consider that this problem where there is no crack, and now you can imagine if there is you have to obtain the solution for this type of situation, and we know the solution for this case, infinite plate with loading at the outer boundary with a crack, then in that case, by superposition of these problems, I can get the solution for this case. So how is that? I can consider a situation that it's an infinite plate with just a situation, there is no crack, and now I can imagine an imaginary crack spanning from A to B. So if I do that, obviously since there is no crack, there is no SIF at the point A and B, so therefore stress intensity factor for these two cases, if I just have this pressure loading compressing the crack faces, and this case which is opening the crack face, then in that case we can get the solution for both the problems. Just 1 minute.
Sure, sir. No problem.
Yeah, that's fine. Hello? Hello? No, I'm in a lecture. I'm still in a lecture after 1:30. Yeah. Okay, so therefore, we'll just see this case, how it is cunning way of getting the solution. You say that you want to find out solution for this problem, knowing the solution for this, or alternatively, you want to find out the solution for this problem, knowing the solution for this case. How we can do? Now I consider actually a problem which is no crack, and therefore I can write now for sure that this problem is nothing but actually these two problems. So one is trying to open the cap, another is trying to close the crack. So if I know the solution for this case, I can find out the solution for this case very easily. So I can now write that stress intensity factor at the crack tip, there is no crack, it is solid actually situation. So therefore SIF at this crack tip is 0, and that is equivalent to saying that SIF at this tip is nothing but SIF for this closing type of loading on the crack, and this is opening type of loading on the crack. So therefore sum up of the SIF of these two cases is this problem case, and therefore this sum up is 0, and the SIF for this case is nothing but minus P root pi A. So minus P root pi A plus SIF for this case, which is a remote loading with P loading, then in that case you see it is minus P root pi A plus Ki, this problem, second problem is 0, and therefore the SIF for this case is nothing but P root pi a. So that's how that you try to consider a situation wherein that a situation for this solution is known. For this case, solution is obvious. There is no SIF, and now this case can be considered to be combination of these two problems, where one case loading is trying to close the crack, and another case where remote loading which is trying to open the crack. So therefore these two problems, if I superpose, it gives me this problem. So this is trying to open the crack with P loading, and here it is trying to close. Yeah.
Can you indicate the figure figure numbers?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry about that. So this is in figure number 5.6. 5.6. So figure 5.6, you see that there you have a plate which is plate, no crack in it, and it is trying to be, it is loaded by P loading at its top and bottom boundary. And this problem, in this case there is no crack, and therefore there is no SIF. So therefore if you consider a span A to B, both at A and B SIF is 0. And that I can consider to be superposition. That type of problem is superposition of a case where middle sketch is showing that infinite plate wherein the crack faces are being closed by pressure loading P, and on the right side there is a plate, infinite plate, which is being opened up by loading at its outer boundary P. So here that these two cases combined together is this problem on the left, and since SIF for the left problem is SIF is 0, then the SIF for the middle problem plus the SIF for the right hand side problem is going to be summing up to 0. And since we know the SIF for the third problem on the right, it is P root pi a, therefore SIF for the middle problem is nothing but P root pi a. So you see that you try to actually be cunning, just try to think of a situation which can be thought about to be superposition of two known problems. Then in that case, you can find out the or one problem at least, then you can find out the solution for the third one which is unknown. That's what. And it is very useful indeed. Actually, many solutions have been obtained by considering this sort of superposition. Okay, now the third method, which is actually quite abundantly applied, and it has been able to help people to apply problems for complicated cases. It's known as weight function method. And it is actually possible, there are actually books available on this type of weight function method. And it is not difficult, but it is simple. So let me just talk about it, that what is the idea. So you see that if you think of a problem of this type, you have loading, which is shown there in figure 5.7, and then you have a crack there, which is shown, which is along the x-axis, and the crack opening is U bar. That means between the faces, the opening is U bar. Now you see, if you think of it, that you didn't have the crack, that there is a crack now of size A, then in that case, the opening has taken place against the internal resistance, and therefore the work done in opening the crack from U bar equal to 0, from 0, x equal to 0 to A, there has been some work done, and that work done is W. W is actually nothing but it is half integral 0 to A px0 du bar dA dx. I mean, obviously work done is actually, it is differentiated, and that differentiation has taken into the, within the integral sign, that's how it has become. So if you try to see, the work done is nothing but actually pxa, so the loading on the line x equal to 0, if just think of an uncracked plate and this is loading, then in that case, along the x-axis, the loading will be px0, because it's not the y stress along the line x equal to y equal to 0, from 0 x equal to 0 to A, then in that case, work done is going to be half Px du, I'm sorry, it is just Px0 u bar dx. That's the work done. But if I want to say that rate of work done per unit crack extension, then that is strain energy release rate, and it is going to be dw dA, and therefore you get the integration that if you know the loading on the x-axis over the span, then this integration will give you the strain energy release rate, and strain energy release rate is nothing but K, it is related to K. Indeed, the relationship is nothing but K1 square by E, and therefore you see this relationship, this work done evaluation will give you the evaluation for the SIF. So this is Westergaard stress function, I'm sorry, weight function method. And indeed, Ki, so that actually, that as I said, G equal to K1 square by E, that has been converted in the form that it is 0 to A stresses or loading on the x-axis, and this function E by 2Ki du bar dA. Now, you know that this one term E by 2Ki du bar dA is a property, it's a constant for the class of problem which are loaded in this form. If it is loaded like this, single edge crack, and with actually varieties of loading on the outer boundary, then in that case you see this function, the stress intensity factor, if we know for one case, and then we know the opening displacement, then this relationship, what it says, that rate of opening U bar with a rate of opening of the crack with respect to crack size per unit SIF applied is actually something which is a constant. So therefore, what it means, that rate of opening of the crack with respect to crack size per unit SIF applied is a constant for the whole class of problem. So if you have this type of problem, you know, single edge crack, varieties of loading, if it is concentrated loading, it's a bending moment loading, whatever it is, for all those cases, this function E by 2Ki du bar dA, that's going to be a constant. It is called weight function. It's actually nothing but rate of crack opening per unit SIF applied for a class of problem. It is constant. Then in that case, SIF is just available for any problem that can come to that can belong to this class, knowing that solution for one case. So you have actually infinite number of loading of this type, and if you know solution for one problem only, any problem where the loading is known and the opening displacement is known as a function of crack size, you can construct this integral and you can find out the solution. And in fact, this is something which is also abundantly applied. And as I said, that this is actually, there are books available for this weight function. This is called weight function, with the term within that bracket called it weight function. And it is actually available in lots of handbooks. So therefore, your stress intensity factor unknown problem, what it needs is that it simply needs the loading on the crack edges, whatever is the loading on the crack, in the crack line, along the crack line, in the uncracked body, and then actually you try to multiply by this function, which is called weight function. Its symbol is mxa, and integrate this quantity, that will be there. I think I just want to talk about a little more on this. What I said, that in the weight function method, what is known is that it is actually find out the problem, whether it is single edge crack, double edge crack, center edge crack, or of the same type. So in that case, what you need is that you need that weight function for any one problem. So if you know any one problem of this type, then you know what is actually U expression for, and take this du dA and multiply by E by 2Ki, that will give you the weight function mxa. And then for your problem, wherein you know that you can find out the loading due to the specific loading that is specified, you take that and the value of the stresses along the crack line, and then in that case you take this integration, which is it's a standard integration. So therefore this is the loading which is for your problem. This is something a single function which is available for the whole class of problems, and then let's take this product and integrate, and that will give you the SIF. So that's what actually is the approach, and indeed it has been applied also in many cases. So this case also you can apply. So in this case, if I have to solve, what I need is that I need the solution for this case, right hand case. For this case, the U solution is readily available, and then actually see the P loading that is there for this type of outer boundary loading. The loading on the crack faces will be simply P, trying to open the crack, and then if you try to actually take the integration Px0 mxa, so mxa is the solution available and P is the loading, and then you get the SIF as P root pi a, which we have also obtained earlier by the superposition method. So some cases are there. The handbook of weight function is there available, and there many times this weight function is given in a from infinite series, and then in that case you can also find out solution for specific problem where the boundary loading is specified. So this is the weight function approach, and it has been applied to a number of problems for solution. So some examples are. So these are the analytical methods for finding out the solution of the SIF. So we have actually been able to take up this much. Now I think we have some more time to pass. So what I have decided, I will just actually try to also take this time available for bringing something more before you, which is also going to be discussed by my colleague later, by some colleagues. So let me just tell you what is this. The analytical method has been the basis for finding out SIF for cases which are manageable easily, but most of the time the geometry etc. are going to be not very simple. Loading is also not simple. Then in that case, how do we obtain the solutions? This is the question, and therefore one of the very versatile method and extremely widely applied is finite element. So in the case of finite element method, this is actually a general method. So detail of the finite element will be given. Some of you are already exposed using software also left and right in solving stress analysis problem. So that's always there. Just to give you something which I kept in mind to be presented in the time available. You see that in the finite element method, what you do is that you try to take the problem and then you consider the problem of given geometry to be broken into an assemblage of small size elements. So finite size elements, that's why I call it finite element method. Think of it that you have a rectangular plate, you have loading P acting at the top edge, and then it's fixed at the bottom edge at 2 points. So if you are interested, so in that case, what you do is that you split it into elements of number of elements of finite dimensions, and in general, the stress analysis means that either you find out the stresses at every point, or you find out the displacement in the whole body. So finite element formulations, that when you try to write the body broken into number of elements, now the point remains that you have the option of assuming the variation of displacement within the element. You can start, rather than your objective is to find out the displacement at few locations of the body or in the whole body, then what you do is that when you try to break it into small elements, and try to assume some displacement variation within each of these elements, then you come out with some situations where the external loading can be related to the displacements at the corner points of all the elements that you have inserted in the domain. So how do we do that? So briefly, that when you try to consider element field, that means variation of displacement within the element of finite dimensions, then you see you get an expression which are polynomial expansion, and then those polynomial expansions finally can be settled in terms of the displacement at the corner nodes. So therefore, if you are interested in finding out the displacement over this whole rectangular plate, you try to get it converted into determination of displacements with this assumption of displacement field variation within each of the element in terms of displacement only at the corner nodes. So the problem of infinite degrees of freedom. So if you try to take infinite number of elements, there will be infinite number of corner points, and you try to actually write the displacement field in the whole body in terms of the displacement at the corner nodes. And thereby you see that whole displacement field, if you have to determine, it boils down to determination of the displacement at the corner nodes. And the whole body is actually just like a structural assemblage. Each of the triangular elements are actually joined at the common corner nodes, and that's how the whole structure. So you think of it that your body is now consisting of, in this case, 8 triangular elements, and which are all actually connected at the corner nodes, no other points. And the forces are transmitted through the corner nodes. And in this process, finally, you see that you find that this will enable you to connect the corner node displacements with the external load applied, and that will be actually set of simultaneous equations. So once you have the load specified at the corner node from this given loading, you can now write the relationship between the displacements at the corner nodes by solving those simultaneous equations. Then subsequently you can get the stresses and strains at any point within the body. So this is the gist of the finite element. So this equation, simultaneous equations that can be obtained by equilibrium consideration, it can be obtained by energy considerations, it can be obtained by weighted residual method, minimizing the error in the solutions. All these things are there. But that method will be taught to you separately. But I am just trying to come to that we can take the same approach to find out the displacements at infinite number of points, or rather finite number of points that we have constructed in my discretization. So once you have got that, you have got the displacement field. Then in that case, for a cracked plate also, with loading applied, you can find out the displacement in the whole plate, and then these solutions will also help you to find out the stresses at the interested points, and then you are ready to obtain the evaluation. You can go for evaluation of SIA. So how is that done? So once you have got the displacement at the number of points that we have inserted in the domain, now the question is, how do we go about finding out the SI? You see, there are varieties of methods. So some of the methods are based on displacement directly. Some of the methods are based on stresses directly. Some of the methods are by using extrapolation. Some of the methods are based on calculation of J integral. Some of the evaluations are based on crack closure integral, strain energy release rate based calculations. So varieties of methods are there. So therefore, I would just like to talk about that. How do you really go for evaluating the SIF in terms of based on the utilization of results of finite element? So displacement method is quite straight. You see, just I bring the actual thing for you. Just 1 second. Yeah, displacement and stress method of extraction. So herein you see that if you see the solution for crack tip, then displacement U at any point R from the crack tip is given by this expression. If it is mode 1 problem, then your SIF in mode 1 multiplied by 2R root pi square root and a function of theta. So in this case, you see that for crack faces, if you take a point which is R distance behind the crack tip, then in that case, your SIF is given by displacement of the crack point, or the at the point where you are concentrating is equal to K1 root 2 R by pi square root 2 pi R by pi into U bar theta. So U bar theta is a known function of theta. So in this case, if you select the point at a finite distance from the crack tip R, then in that case you see that from the finite element solution, you know U at the point where the node is located, then you just plug in this expression value of R and theta, then only unknown is K1, you can find out the value of SI. So this is displacement based method. So herein you see that displacement method is widely employed and you get to obtain the SIF very easily from the finite element solution. But you know, the results obtained directly by utilizing this expression is not always good. Sometimes one can think of a number of points on the, let's say, x-axis, and it will have varieties of value of R, and you can get the SIF from the finite element solution. It will vary along that solid line, and if you wanted to get the correct value, you make use of extrapolation. So you extrapolate this part where R is actually having some finite value back to R equal to 0, and the intersection point will be the best result. So this is extrapolation method, stress extrapolation method. And similarly, you see that you can have the stress based. That means rather than comparing the displacement, you can compare the stresses. Again, actually, stresses will be given in terms of R theta. Like here, you see the stresses are given in terms of SIF, R point, distance, and the function of theta. So in this case, rather than displacement comparison at a point, you can compare the stresses at a point. That will also give you value of the SIF. Again, to improve the accuracy, you can go for extrapolation method where you can vary R from 0 to some finite value, and extrapolation will give you the result which is going to have best accuracy. So these are the stress and displacement method. And now the more accurate method. What are the more accurate method? Energy-based methods for determination of SIF. Now we see that in the finite element method, we can have the stresses and displacement determined. We can also find out the strain energy in the whole body, you know, and G, strain energy release rate, which is given by two strain energies corresponding to some two crack sizes, and then you know that it is difference between the two energies and the difference in the two crack sizes. If you take this ratio, that gives you the value of strain energy release rate. And indeed, finite element method will have some degree of accuracy in the calculation of strain energy. And if you take two crack sizes differing by a small size, and if you calculate this strain energy release rate in terms of the difference between the two energies and then divide by that delta A, it gives you the value of strain energy release rate, which is more accurate. So this differencing method, it makes use of the fact that the strain energies corresponding to the crack sizes have same degree of error, and when you take the difference, it becomes actually less erroneous, more accurate, and therefore when you try to take G calculated by this difference method, it is more accurate, and from the relationship of Irwin, that G equal to K1 square by E in the case of plane stress, and G equal to 1 minus mu square Ki square by E in the case of plane strain. So therefore, you know, you can evaluate the SIF in both the cases by this energy method. So therefore, this requires, imagine that this method of calculation will require evaluation of the strain energy for two crack sizes, and therefore it is going to be costly. This is finite element calculations increases, cost time increases, therefore cost increases in computations, more are the computations. So therefore in this case, rather than one analysis, in the stress method uh, and displacement method, you see, we just did evaluation once and you could have evaluated SIF so that there is no two times computation, one time computation, but the accuracy of SIF was less accurate than this energy-based method where there are two computations. So it is again, you see that it is certainly objectionable. What is this? I get the accuracy by spending more money, and it is not actually tolerable. So therefore, people started, working out that how these two times computations can be avoided, and therefore the accuracy will be good, but at the same time cost will be less. So that's how it is, and indeed that has been possible. And that has been possible. These are actually some of the strategies which are utilized in improving the finite element based computation of SIF. And these methods are known as the J integral based method, and then crack closure integral method, and also virtual crack extension method. So these are actually there, but I think that I was more keen in trying to tell you about this J integral based method, and then also the J integral, the standard, what you call that, J integral method, and also crack closure integral method, or even if there is a method called derivative based method, stiffness derivative based method. So I would like to actually just spend time on J integral based method, because now we have given you a J integral, and therefore now I would like to actually just take this time or make use of this time for J integral method. So how do you actually get J? Already we have said that this J is equal to G. That strain energy release rate is J, and it is same as J integral. So therefore you see that we get some opportunity of obtaining the value of strain energy release rate by making use of this J integral, and that's what I am going to talk about. So just again come back to the finite element discussion. See that this is the type of problem that we have. We have to concentrated loading on the plate P. Capital P is there acting at the corner, and then we have the discretization, which is shown there fully. That is the discretization where all earth type element is that 4-noded element, and I have discretized the whole domain. Now we know for sure that the strain energy release rate for such a problem is given by J integral, and that J integral is W dy minus Ti delta U delta x delta U delta x ds. So that's the integral. See, this is your integral. Now your evaluation of J has got to be done along a contour joining 2 points on the crack faces. So if somebody is interested in evaluating J for this problem, that is J integral for this problem, then what he has to do, you see that he has to consider a contour which is actually starting from, let's say, this bottom point. In this case, that contour is shown by dotted line, and it is actually spread. It is spread from bottom point on the crack face to the top corresponding point on the top crack face by this closed contour. So I can now think of it that my contour is actually J contour given by this dotted line, and I have to integrate that quantity W dy minus integration of Ti delta ui delta x ds. So if I have to integrate, then I can, this is a continuous integration, but I can actually replace this continuous integration by piecewise summation process. So what is that? If you are saying that you want to integrate this quantity, that this quantity there you see at the top, j equal to, it is nothing but actually you break this contour from the top bottom point to the top point into number of small segments, and it is passing through the elements small segment, this quantity w dy minus ti delta ui delta x ds. So I have to actually this sum up process or continue that integration over that span from bottom point to top point. I can break that contour into small number of small segments, which is shown in this diagram, you see. So let's get back to this. Yeah, you see here this contour, which is actually which is shown, which is passing through the element number 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So that those elements are actually surrounding the crack tip, and for each of these elements, we have more accurate value of the stresses and strain at the Gauss points of the element. So the element actually generally are considered to be represented by the Gauss points of the element, where the stresses and strains are more accurate after the emulation. So therefore, we try to consider the contour passing through the Gauss points, which are shown by stars. For if it is actually 8-noded elements, then they will have actually 4 Gauss points lying within each element, and they will be lying on actually arcs finite distance from the crack tip, and therefore I can take a circular contour starting from the bottommost point on the crack face to the topmost point, corresponding topmost point on the crack face, and therefore this is the contour. So therefore, if I want to evaluate the total value of j, which is from the bottom point to the top point, what I can do is that I can now write that it is nothing but trying to get the value of this j integral at the Gauss point, which will correspond to half span of the element. You see that if you try to take element number 9, then the Gauss point at the top is going to actually give the value, approximate value valid for the half element till the middle by this value at this Gauss point. So therefore, you see the value of this stresses and strain for this segment, which is in this case, this each span is about 45 degree, and therefore 22.5 degree span is going to be represented by values of the stresses and strain at one point. So I can evaluate w dy minus ti delta ui delta x ds over each span, and then take the value of that integrand, and that will give me a value. So let's say that is the value j subscript 1. Then the next Gauss point will give you value j equal to 2, and this third Gauss point value, which is coming next, will give you value equal to j3. So that means actually your integrand is obtained by summing up the values at these Gauss points, and in fact the value that you obtain by this summing up process is quite accurate. It's very accurate indeed, and therefore after having evaluated this j integral over the contour that you have selected, you can get the SIF by the fact that this j integral is equal to g equal to k1 square by e by in the case of plane stress problem. So this is what is j integral based method, and it's very accurate indeed, and it is actually widely used in evaluation of stress intensity factor, whether it is a body which is subjective to loading in one mode or multiple modes. It is possible to evaluate the value of both mode 1 and mode 2 stress intensity factor in 2 dimensions. So that's the beauty of this finite element method, and it is also using the energy method based on the J integral. And obviously, you know that another method which is, I think that will be difficult for me to talk about, but J integral I could talk about because we have discussed about J integral in the morning today. So that's it. You know that this J integral is something which is going to be quite useful. Now, other method, of course, they are there, but I think that mathematics I now try to actually bring in, and it will be finding it little difficult, so we will not actually venture into that. And let me see what else I can bring. So this J integral method is really very good, which is that evaluation of the uh, values of this Ti delta U delta X, and is also available. It's very simple to calculate by the finite element method, and then sum up to get the values over each segment, and then get the total. Yeah, I think this method is something which can be talked about. It is actually, it is called the stiffness derivative procedure. So stiffness derivative procedure, I think I can certainly talk about, and you will also be in a position to understand. So that you see that G is nothing but, just 1 minute please.
Yes, sir.
Hello? 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 Okay, so what is that? This is something also, please, you can understand, it's not difficult. So G is nothing but potential energy derivative with respect to A. And indeed, actually, you know, your potential G is also, you know, you can write U is nothing but what is that? Load equal to P is equal to K into U, stiffness matrix multiplied by displacement. In general, our expression for uh, pi is nothing but it is work done by the external forces, strain energy minus work done by the external forces. So if you write in a symbolic form, that potential energy is nothing but what is strain energy? Half K U square. You know that if you write a single spring of stiffness K and load subjected to P, then in that this potential energy is nothing but half P square, P displacement square minus work done by the external forces is P into U or U into P. So pi potential energy for this symbolic thing, finite element method, U pi is nothing but half U transpose K into U. So it is actually matrices, U matrix, K matrix, that's what it is. And work done by the external forces are actually displacement multiplied by load. So this is what is the potential energy. So therefore you see that if I want to say G is nothing but potential energy release rate, then in that case G is nothing but minus d pi dA. So G, if I want to say G, then it is, you take the derivative of pi, and that will give you this expression. So that PU, দরজা খোলা আছে রে।
Ajay Barule,
Just 1
Ajay
minute.
Barule.
I'm sorry, I'm coming. Hello, sorry about that.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you see that if I now write the expression continue, so it gives you G equal to du transpose dA P and minus this expression, this product of terms, so therefore you try to write the derivative in that form. So now then we can write P equal to du transpose, this expression we can write, it is nothing but this, and finally what we find is that G comes out to be for this expression, and from this relationships, I can get this, that G equal to half U transpose K2 minus K1 by delta A into U. I think this, let me spend about a minute on this relationship. You see that your finally G, it has become actually equal to this. What it means, I think forget please this line which is there at the center. Finally G is equal to, it is nothing but minus half U transpose K2 minus K1 by delta A into U. I think let me explain this. What it says, that if you are interested in finding out the strain energy release rate, what you ought to do is this, that you take two crack sizes differing by a small value, and then actually you just actually have to make use of the stiffnesses corresponding to the two discretization and take the ratio K2 minus K1 by delta A multiplied by U. So I think all of the participants please just concentrate. What I am saying, that we take a given case of crack size A, and then if I have to evaluate the strain energy release rate by this procedure, it is actually, I have to calculate the stiffness corresponding to two crack size A plus delta A. Just stiffness I have to calculate K2 minus K1 by delta A, that much, and then have the displacement evaluated for the given loading and geometry. So this, this is a case wherein you can just actually avoid computations of two problems. You just have computation corresponding to the given problem, and then you can actually very easily evaluate this quantity. And that is what is, I would like to say, it is called stiffness derivative procedure. So if you can find out the rate of change of stiffness with respect to crack size, then value of the displacement, if you have got it for a particular crack size, you can evaluate this energy release rate and hence the SI. So that was actually something which gives this relationship. And finally, you see that we can again make it little sort of, we can go on actually hair splitting, and then finally it can be proven that this integral can be also evaluated by a simple method like this. You see, it is a simple method like this. What is that? So just 1 minute, I would like to actually get to the proper sketch and or a proper diagram and then talk about. Yeah, see here. This is the diagram which is useful here. So I have actually, here you see that I have a problem with crack size A, and then I have just amended the discretization by making the crack size A plus delta A. How I have done? I have actually taken the elements which are around the crack tip within that circle there. I have just shifted it by a small distance delta A, and then my discretization got to fit in for a crack size A plus delta A. So I would like to again start here saying that I had taken the discretization wherein all the circles were with tip equal to given crack tip. But now then I have actually just modified the discretization by shifting the 8 elements around the crack tip to the right by a distance delta A, those 1 to 8 elements to the right by delta A, and the discretization has become like this. And therefore the elements between the inner circle and the next circle, they got distorted. They were actually initially quite nice shaped, radial, and also arc dimensions with a curved boundary. They have become little distorted. So this is what it has really given rise to. Now, my evaluation of that J integral using the stiffness derivative method, it needed consideration of a crack of size A, another situation with crack size A plus delta A. So, simple way of going about, I can get the stiffness of the whole body considering the original setup of elements, and then another setup wherein the 8 elements around the crack tip, they got shifted, and therefore 8 elements in the next row got actually circular arc, they got distorted, and therefore I'll have difference in different, there will be difference in the stiffnesses, and therefore the whole stiffness gets modified because of the distortion of these 8 elements in the second row in the process. So I can calculate the stiffness of the whole lot of elements with original crack tip, and I can take the stiffness corresponding to the second crack tip, and then I can take the difference between the two, and then I can do the multiplication half U transpose that difference in the stiffness matrix multiplied by UU. So that will give me the change in strain energy, and hence I can take that per unit crack extension delta A, and that will give me G. But you see that this is again actually it is trying to indicate that you have to really consider two discretization setup, calculate the stiffness matrix for the whole lot of elements. We somehow actually, we have shown that it's not needed. It's not needed, and there is something quite simple possible. What is that simplicity? You can actually take the original 8 elements, which are actually circular boundary and straight boundary, those elements, you can take analyze the given problem, find out the displacement at all the nodes, and then you see you calculate the strain energy, which is nothing but half U transpose element stiffness matrix by displacement. You calculate the strain energy in those 8 elements that you have shifted in the case where the crack tip is located at the original crack tip with crack size A. And then you see that you simply shift that crack tip by delta A, therefore the 8 elements that we were talking about, it got distorted, and therefore its stiffness matrix is going to change. And now what you do is that calculate the energy in those 8 elements which got distorted using the stiffness matrix of those 8 elements. That means half U transpose K modified multiplied by U in these 8 elements. So that strain energy in the 8 elements for the two cases will be different. And in fact, that potential energy is nothing but difference in the stiffness matrix or energy in the whole body in the two cases, and then divided by delta. So what we have found that, finally, if I do the calculation of strain energy change in the whole body, just by considering the amendment in the stiffness of these 8 elements multiplied by the short displacement, we get very good.
Sir, your battery has become low. You have to
Yeah, sorry, I'm just putting it. Yeah, thank you.
please switch it on. Yeah.
That's okay. So therefore, you see that if I just try to consider those 8 elements which got distorted from the regular shape to little actually cocoid, and if I take that stiffnesses but the displacements of the corner node exactly the same as in the original case, I get some difference in the energies in the 2 states, and that's what actually is quite accurate. And if you take that difference and then convert it into per unit crack extension, it gives you the value of G very accurate. So it is known as stiffness derivative procedure. It is the stiffness in the 2 cases divided by delta A, that is stiffness derivative. And if you do the calculation, it gives you the value of G very accurate. So I think that this is what actually my interest was, that I would like to talk about this J integral based method and stiffness derivative based method. And they give rise to computational strategy which is not involved, but then the value that we get is very accurate. And indeed the SIF evaluation through this process of the J integral method, they are very accurate. In fact, there are other methods, variants of this type of approach, what is known as actually crack closure integral based method. So maybe I wouldn't have actually opportunity of discussing on that, but they are also very simple. In fact, they are very cunning, and people have actually been using this method left and right and getting very good computational results. So that's what it is, that SIF calculation can be done by finite element based method, and there are varieties of strategies and they can be adopted and get computational advantages, but at the same time accuracy in the results. So that's what it is. So obviously, I thought that I must tell you, and even if the other faculty who is going to present only finite element method, I hope you will get double benefited. You will actually have the advantage of this discussion, and hope you really have more benefits from the discussion on the finite element method, which will come up by our another colleague. I think that's it. I think we should probably have this to be the last discussion for today for me, and I don't want to actually go further on the problem solving. I do have problems for solving, but then I think that this should be good enough. And now that I have discussed both in evaluation of SIF and also the other strategies or theories associated with the fractal mechanics, please, I think you will have enough opportunity of asking questions and clarifications. So let's spend the remaining time as much as possible till 1:30. It's about 1 o'clock.
Yes, dear participants, if you have any questions based on the discussion that sir has done today, or even previous, in
Yeah,
earlier sessions,
no issue at all. No issue.
yeah, please.
I think that please think of it and come out with questions. If you don't have, I would like to tell some sort of story and how I got motivated to work on fractal mechanics, and so that would be something also useful for you. That motivation for fractal mechanics, that's, let me put it this way, and it is useful. I have presented this sort of discussion at a number of places while I was talking on fractal mechanics. You see that when I was a postgraduate student in England, I was actually doing research, and then my research was confined, or rather actually involved in designing a high energy rate forming machine. I was asked to design a machine which was doing for high energy rate forming machine. You do the operation at high speed, and therefore your raw material is also produced by high energy rate forming machine, and then you try to do the shearing operation. That was the machine I was looking into, and then I was asked to design a machine. And while such a machine works, involving impact. So you have it's just think of a die and punch situation in the case of blanking operation. So both die and punch, they are actually in the machine, and they are maneuvered by high energy movement or high speed. So there was a tool wherein there is a moving tool which is moving, and it is actually hit by another moving body or piston, and it is actually moving at speed about 30 feet per second. So that is the situation. So therefore it's sitting, that long bar is there held by the die, and the moving tool is actually at the center. It moves at velocity about 30 feet per second, and it gets separated from the stock, which is very long. So this was the case, and then while it is being separated from the long stalk, that bit which is called billet, that billet actually gets separated by this propagation of crack from the tool edges, die and punch edges, and that's taking place at that high energy or high speed. It gives rise to the surface at the two edges, which are circular. It was not flat, it was little cocoid, it was not actually flat, it was having curviness, and therefore I was asked to look into that, how that crack propagation, which really separates the billet from the remaining stock, can be made little better, and surface can be little more at right angle to the longitudinal dies. So that's the problem. See, I am trying to tackle this problem after doing my BTech, wherein I have just studied for the strength of materials, and that's all, and probably a little bit of vibration. So I was really faced with the problem of solving that problem. First thing, they have posed me the question that at the moment we are trying to shear this bar of dimension 1 inches, it is EN steel, and we would like to actually have larger dimensions separated by the same machine, or utilize more energy from the moving body. And this body, it's complex. This tool is very complex. It has actually a static part and the moving part, and moving part is moving with a velocity of 10 meters per second. Energy is being transferred during the operation through an impact. So I was asked to study. So I was interested. I was doing experiment, and I was trying to even do experiment to capture the velocity of the tool movements during the operation, before the operation, and then also after the operation. And after doing the measurements, I got the velocities, and also I got the time measured during which this impact is taking place and energy transfer is taking place from the moving body to the static body. So all these problems are there, and I have to study the crack propagation. So I was initially, I deciphered that I must actually try to study this energy transfer by the impact, and therefore I was having the knowledge of only Newtonian rigid body impact. That's what we have studied by impact, the conservation of momentum, conservation of energy. These are the two equations. So I tried to think of that and apply it, and therefore it was actually not taking me too far. Then somebody said that you must study stress wave propagation through solids and analyze this impact problem. So when I was actually trying to study stress wave propagation, all that new mathematics and also new concepts, so I started studying, and then also I started solving some problems. So I was okay, I did that. But then you see, after having studied for quite some time. Then I came to the conclusion this is not going to take me too far to solve this problem at hand. So finally, I started thinking of some different strategy of solving this impact problem, and I actually did some hybrid method. I did the Newtonian rigid body impact plus this wave stress wave propagation. Both I combined. I did some modeling, and I could solve. I also did experiment, and the results were quite encouraging. So that was one part. But then this problem of crack propagation, trying to solve the problem of what you call that quality of shearing process. I mean, I was really, I did experiment very carefully, and I was excited that this crack propagation is taking place, and this fracture mechanics is just actually coming up. It is at its what you call infancy, just it is coming up, and I started reading it. And then, I was certainly getting excited that crack propagation. I also did some experiment, collected data. So I was there. So then you see that I started thinking of solving the problem that yes, let the specimen be there and the crack is originating at the tool, and that is die and punch edge. So you think of it punching situation. You are trying to punch a bit and from the sheet. So cracks initiate both at the punch edge and the die edge, and they really meet each other and separate the blank out of the stock. I hope you appreciate that. So you are thinking of punching a piece from a sheet. So therefore, what you do is that you paste the punch, and then it pierces into the material blank, and then crack originate at the edges of the moving tool, and at the same time it also originate at the edges of the static tool, and they move in the direction to meet hello to each other and separate the specimen. So then now, I tried to study again, look into the type of propagation that happens experimentally. Then I started actually saying that I think this problem is quite interesting. How the crack is propagating in the bar and getting the blanks separated, billets separated, I must study. So that was the point, which became very dominant in my mind. And then I started saying that this is a problem I must study. So that's how you see that I got interested in studying the crack propagation process and also its analysis from that problem. And then I started, reading papers and trying to understand fracture study and what sort of progress has taken place, what developments are there, what are the various concepts which are useful. Then in the process, you see that if I have to solve this problem, I certainly, started doing it. And then at that point of time, finite element is also just originating. And after having seen that some of the PhD students there in the university, they were using finite element method to analyze the stresses in the body, I started actually reading the concepts, fundamentals of finite element. And in fact, at that point of time, I never had any programming knowledge. I never had any knowledge of finite element. I started reading, and then I also started, writing programs in Fortran, and then also tried to write programs for solving simultaneous equations, solving this sort of finite element problems, again solutions. So I started learning all this, and then after that, I started thinking of using it in the real problem of shearing of that bar shearing. Then I started solving. So that's how I again got into that solution of the problem of crack propagation. And obviously the solution of the crack propagation that I did in my postgraduate stage, it was actually very simple way, and then I could get some answer, and I could actually predict the profile of the crack face that is going to come up due to crack propagation through the material. That was just actually a conceptual thing. I assumed some theory, and then I showed the results. And it was certainly not very solid. It was just actually first trial sort of for the solution. I did it. So that's how it went. But then subsequently, I certainly was all the time bogged that how do I solve this crack propagation problem through the elastic plastic material using the fracture mechanics concept. So the point that came up that I have to really study the propagation of crack through elastic plastic material, and that too of a geometry and the loading which are very complex. So that's how I started studying fracture mechanics, and then I was studying and also trying to give certain solutions to some of the concepts. So that's how I started learning about fracture mechanics, and then I can tell you that till to this day I am not able to crack the problem, but certainly I have actually understood the crack propagation process through the material, having fracture mechanics concept in mind, and that's how I'm I'm really actually going forward and learning. That's how it is. So therefore, you see that how I became interested in fractal mechanics, starting from that problem that was given to me, and that has really kept me going. Even to this day, I have not been able to give the full solution, but nevertheless, I have been able to actually understand fractal mechanics, contribute to fractal mechanics understanding to a substantial extent. I have given lots of computational strategy for computations using finite element, and also lots of approaches for the study of crack propagation through materials. And in fact, I want to tell you that tomorrow I am going to actually present the topic on mixed mode crack propagation. So that will be actually dealing with some of the things that is related to this problem, which I have started studying from 1972-73, and even to this day I am studying. I have not got the answer. So that's how it is. So this is what I wanted to say, that I started with a problem very complex, nevertheless losing hope to solve it someday, and therefore my thrust for analyzing, studying fracture mechanics has gone down, but I am still going and I am still learning. So that's the process, and this is the way one can learn a subject through queries only, not somebody thrusting upon this. You study this and then give me results. It's not that. You see, it is a case. It is a question of your getting actually interested in studying some unknown situations, and therefore you try to decide that what are the materials you should study, what are the strategies you have to follow, and that will actually keep you enriching and your knowledge will get expanded. So that's what I wanted to say, that please, I think these are some of the issues. As faculty members, you should also keep it in mind that learning, in fact, actually I love to be student throughout my life, and it is because of the fact that it is always actually enlightening. So please be student all the life and learn, keep learning, and also keep sharing your knowledge with us. That's what it is. Thank you. That was the point I thought that I just mention, and it will also give you that how the problems of research that we come across, and we try to also do the study and then learn and also go ahead for solving. So that's what it is. This is what is academics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. It was very, very interesting and inspiring story.
Yeah, I think just keep that trust for knowing all the time, and you will really remain what else young. You never get aged. You see that quest for learning should be actually non, and it should not end any time, and it should remain, and therefore you will keep going, and you will really have enjoyment all the time.
Yeah. Sir, I have a couple of questions.
Please do.
Yeah. You have talked about problems in the beginning related to the stress function method in SIF determination.
Yeah.
There, you presented before us these stress functions in the first problem. Perhaps they are given by you in 1983. Just
no, I tell you. See that when I was trying to solve that problem, my research problems, many times I come across situations where the solutions are not available easily, or even stress functions are not available easily. So then you see that I have been also studying about stress function method concurrently. Then I I try to do that. Okay, chalo, okay, this problem, how can it be solved? So with the knowledge of mathematics. In fact, I had actually mathematics as my elective subject in my undergraduate level in the final year. So
Okay.
I studied actually complex variable. I studied so matrix algebra. So with those knowledge, I just thought that okay, let me try if I get some sort of strategy or some actually manipulations so that I can get solution for a problem which is not readily available. ऐसा करके we got those solutions.
Okay. What was the way it was arrived at?
See, the question is that when it is given, we know that change of origin can be done. You can shift the origin, you can get some way of getting solutions for unknown problems. So I just shifted the origin, and then that actually helped me in getting the solution that I have given.
Okay. One more question. It is a general question, not related to particularly these sessions. That at the crack tip, when we are trying to imagine K1 or K2 in the two fundamental modes, I can imagine easily that when a practical problem which has got finite thickness, how the variation, I mean, I can expect easily how K1 and K2 can actually be seen along the thickness. But when it comes to a mode 3 problem, that becomes little hazy, and I am not in a position to make out how K3 would vary along the thickness when we find it out using our 2D approach.
Yeah, I think it's a quite interesting point that you have raised. Now you just think of it that you have a body there. Let's say it is a three-dimensional body. It's a rectangular block. Now you think of it that you have a penny-shaped crack inside the rectangular block.
Okay.
Okay, that penny-shaped crack, it is not, you think of X and Y and Z axis, and then your crack is a penny-shaped crack. It's like a disc there inside. And that disc actually, if it is at an angle and if the loading are acting in the Cartesian directions, then you have a situation of general crack, you see, that it is actually not that what you have to do, then you take a plane just which you consider to be local, and it is actually, let's say it is in the oriented, it has one orientation perpendicular to the tangent at that local point. So it is a penny-shaped crack, and then think of it that curve at a point, and it will have a tangent, right? So if you try to take the normal to that tangent, it becomes radial direction, and that other one becomes actually tangential direction. And then third direction you can certainly actually consider, which is actually Z direction. So therefore, if you think of it, your tangential direction is one X and radial direction is Y, and the normal to that plane is Z. So you have XYZ plane. So it has got to be considered that way. So that locally you try to take the crack tip there, you construct your 1, 2, 3 directions, and your loading can be actually then given in terms of that coordinates that we have introduced. So it's a problem, general problem. It's not just a simple problem that we think about.
Okay.
Now, even I think, I will give you a simple case. Think of a body, it's a rectangular body. You have, let's say that you have a rectangular panel and the crack is oriented at an angle in the horizontal direction. So therefore, the panel is vertical, and you have a crack at an angle to the horizontal direction, and it is edge crack. And now if you think of it, you see that at the tip of the crack, if the loading is concentrated at the boundary, that loading can be split into two components, one parallel to x-axis, another parallel to y-axis. And obviously, that if the crack is oriented in that manner, then obviously it is that loading can be actually resolved into directions parallel to the, or rather in the x direction of the crack, and also in the perpendicular direction, and it will have a mixed mode situation. So therefore, in 2 dimensions, it's simpler to imagine. So if it is 3 dimensions, then in that case, it is just a point that you have to think about, and the loading has got to be taken at a point, and then try to think about what are the X displacement, Y displacement, Z displacement, and at the same time you will have a CR component also there. So they are complex.
Okay, okay. I mean, if it is a mode 3 problem for an aged crack in 0 degree orientation, let's say, if we consider the thickness, why I was getting perplexed is the rotation of the edge of the crack occurs. I mean,
Yeah.
if we, so at the center we can envisage that the rotation is going to be 0. Therefore, perhaps the SIF at the center is going to be more accurate than on the faces.
No, you see, the question is that you then consider your crack tip to be a single point, and
Okay.
obviously it is subjected to three-dimensional loading. So therefore, it is actually a situation slightly different.
Okay.
And obviously, the fracture mechanics that we have been discussing, it is sort of actually a planar sheet sort of, and then subjected to loading, which has been actually generally focused. But obviously, it can be also made it general. Then in that case, it is loading will be in terms of the 6 components of stresses, and accordingly, one can talk in terms of stresses, not actually the stress intensity factor. You can talk in terms of stresses at the point which will be given in terms of 6 stresses, and those 6 stresses can be written in terms of the stress intensity factor and correlated.
Okay, okay. Sir, one more question is that if I have a grooved shaft and if it is subjected to torsional loading, so it will be again mode 3, then, just wanted to know whether the stress intensity factor K3 would be form along the entire circumference of the groove of the notch.
Now again, you see that when you have that situation, it is always stress intensity factor is going to be different at different points on the crack form.
Okay.
Yeah, so therefore, that then in that case, again, you have to come down to that you have to again actually consider what are the X, Y, Z axes locally, and then
Yeah.
you have to define what are the actually loading. And obviously, in such cases, it is easier to work in terms of stresses. The stresses in
Okay.
terms, we can give the stresses in terms of stress intensity factor very easily, and then you can relate.
Okay, so it will also be treated as a general problem.
Yeah, these are all general problems.
Okay. Okay.
That's
Thank
why
you very much.
that's why you see that it is one can consider the superposition principle. The SIF based approach has the advantage. You see that in a complex problem you can have 2 approaches. Either you can have you just think of superposing the SIF to get the total SIF. That is one, but then that's not always possible. But one thing which is more general and which can be applied anywhere, that stresses are given in terms of stress intensity factor, and therefore you can superpose the stresses, and it's very routine matter.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But then all these stress functions, stress concentration, stress intensity factors will be involved, and I don't have to go through the hassle of constructing again the plane and define mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, all that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Participants, any other questions from your side? Some doubts you may have in your mind for months or sometimes years, which you would like to get clarification on, you can do that.
You can do that. You can actually send it to Professor Naik, and in turn he can give me. Alternatively, that probably I think it's not fair to give you my mobile number, because many times we may not be able to also attend to it. So better that actually you have questions if they are bugging you for a long time. Please do that to Sachin, and Sachin will be very happy to actually get some clarity from my side. That will be the way we can address.
Always, sir.
Yeah.
Yes. Always. Please, participants, feel free to write about your questions to me either. No problem. I will see to it. I promise you that I'll communicate them with great fidelity to Professor Maiti and try to get you answer. So I think,
So I think they have become unreal. Sorry. Somebody wanted to say something.
Sir,
it was
yes, sir. I'm
okay.
sir.
Dr.
Normally
Shanmuga,
the
please.
crack. Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity, sir. Sir, the finite analysis normally we call this approximate solution method, and so if it may be possible to analysis of the crack tip by the way of Gaussian quadrature method. Is it possible to analysis the method also, sir?
It's getting split, your voice is getting split. I am not getting clearly what is your question.
Sir, finite element analysis normally is called as approximate solution method.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Yeah. So the crack tip tip analysis is by the way of the Gaussian quadrature method to help to find out the problems in the crack tips also, sir. The Gaussian quadrature method. The normal integration method.
No. See, the question is that when you have crack problems, then you try to make use of elements which can really evaluate or which can really model the stress variation accurately, and they are available. See, now at the crack tip, we know that there is stress singularity, and in fact, actually, there are dozens of elements and an infinite number of elements available to take care of the stress variation at the crack tip. Once you take the variations in the element formulation, it becomes accurate. So, finite element becomes convergent in such situations when the elements are in a position to take care of the element stress variation more accurately, and that's why you see lots of singularity elements have been developed and they are available in the packages, and therefore the convergence does not remain a problem of convergence in the case of finite element analysis.
So different way of the element available in the analysis techniques, for example, LST and CST and correlator elements are there. So normally, which type of the element is going to analysis in the crack tip find out the solution?
Yeah, you see, the question is that obviously in the case of elastic track, the singularity is fixed; it is square root singularity. So there are actually infinite number of elements available to take care of this in the square root singularity. And in case it is not square root singularity, other order of singularity which are there in the case of bimaterials, the singularity will depend if the crack is at the interface of the two materials, and singularity order is not square root singularity, something different. So there are actually variable order singularity elements are also available. So to take care of the convergence condition, people actually have to make use of the proper singular elements, and there are choices one has to go for it. If he does not do and use the, let's say, constant CSTA type of element, ordinary element, the convergence is slow, but then you see that making the elements refined, small size, he still can actually get the good solution and no difficulty about it.
Sir, what software packages available nowadays to get analysis of crack tip analysis? Any software packages there?
Baba. There are actually any package you take, ANSYS, Abacus, Adina, you name actually the hundreds of them are there. They are all actually developed for taking care of all these special situations. So there is no problem. Only the question is what funds you have and which package you can get to have.
Yes, sir. Maybe sometimes that the crack profile is some curve shape or irregularities will be take place in the outside the crack tip. So, is normal analysis software packages is helpful to rectify the problem in the surface profile, outside profile. This problem is possible.
No, I think, see, the question is that your packages are actually not dependent on problem geometry; they are independent. So, therefore, the question is that you have to select the package having some. If there is some speciality in your applications, then you select the package accordingly for advantage.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, see, all packages will give you certainly it's limitations in applications or utility in situations. So please actually you have to take a decision on that matter.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I think, sir, it is close to 1:30 now.
Yeah.
We can now stop the session.
Thank you very much. So wish you all the best. And again, we'll meet tomorrow for the last presentation of mine in the first hour tomorrow. So please, we then actually stop for now and please have lunch and then move forward.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for your very, very interesting and informative lectures and other discussion that you have made today about the investigations which you carried out as a postgraduate student. It was really interesting to listen to you in these two sessions. Thank you very much.